Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to take you on a roller coaster ride around some EU data protection regulations, so hold on to your seats. It's going to be wild, absolutely wild. We will give you a little bit of an idea of what we're going to talk about. Firstly, who is CIS? What do we do? Why are we here? Secondly, a little bit about the proposed data regulations, what the changes are, a little bit about the history of it, that sort of thing. Perhaps the most important bit, what to do to make sure you don't end up on the wrong side of them, because the results of doing that are fairly horrendous. The other part we'll look at is how you stop breaches in your data storage or your data usage or your data transit. However you use your data, make sure it doesn't get out in the first place. And finally, how we as a company can offer advice, point you in the right direction of where to get help from if you should need it. So who are we? We actually predate the original Data Protection Act, easy for me to say, someone else's teeth in. That was in 1995. We were founded in 1989, so we've been going for a very long time. We can remember computers before computers. We're that old. We specialize in four main areas. First of all, IT security, which is why I'm here. IT managed services, private cloud, and consultancy. So not only do we understand how the technology works, we also understand how to apply it to various businesses and various business needs. We work with a lot of non-IT business owners, and the reason that's important is because quite a lot of the impact of the EU data regulations are not really technical. They're more around how you do stuff, how you protect things, how your staff work, what the processes are that you're using on a day-to-day basis to run your business. So our experience of working with non-IT focused companies, business owners, people in general, means we have ways to explain quite sensibly and logically what the implications are without babbling techno-geek. The other thing that sets us apart is we have our own bunker. Pretty exciting, it's not a World War II bunker, where we have our own cloud, where we put stuff. That's important because part of what the EU data regulations will cover is knowing where your data is, knowing what whereabouts your data is when it's at rest, when it's being used, or when it's in transit. So what is this data regulation all about? I mentioned earlier about the 1995 Data Protection Directive. That was just about the same time that the internet was invented, so kind of stale now. So it's really about an update of what we need to do to make sure that the massive data that every company amasses is protected and used in the right way. There have to be some benefits, otherwise they wouldn't have gone through all this, and there are. I'll put the top three up first of all. Better data security. What we're looking at doing is, what the EU are looking at doing is making sure that people are driven to use best practice when it comes to looking after your data. There is an awful lot of confusion out there about what is best practice, what should I do, how much should I spend. This is all about the EU suggesting best ways to use the technology that's out there to make sure your data is as safe as is appropriate for your business. One EU, one market, one law. June the 24th, who knows? But at the moment, we're part of the EU. It makes a lot more sense to have a single cover-all regulation that has the same impact on every country within the EU. Putting people in control, and that's a little bit difficult to explain, but instead of looking at the data and the technology, this is all about protecting people's personal, identifiable information. What makes you, you in the digital world? And that's what it's focused on. That's why it's key. Same rules for all companies. Whether you're a one-man band in Vista Village or whether you're a multinational, the same rules will apply. The one-stop shop. So if you do something wrong, there is one overarching authority that will let you know you've done something wrong. At the moment, it's called the EDPB, the European Data Protection Board. It's in its nascent form at the moment, and it will be developed and become a rolling machine by probably the end of this year. The data regulation compliance has its focus on data security. And the reason that's important is because it's not just about the technology. So when people talk about data security, they immediately think antivirus, malware, phishing, all that sort of stuff. It's a lot more than that. There's a whole process of using data, from generating it, from storing it, transferring it, making sure people can share it in the right way. And that process is what is key to understand before you even start looking about complying with this data regulation. The second part of this is about the notification. If you do something wrong, if you do have a leak, if you do have a breach, not the end of the world, but someone will need to know. And that someone is an EU covering body, the EBPB. The final part is that because it's personal data, you are bound by law, if there is a breach, to tell the people whose data it is. So if someone loses my credit card numbers, my address, my phone number, my email address, they have to tell me. So there are a number of companies that have been caught in the past, TalkTalk's one, where that is a very expensive operation, not only in terms of cash, but also in terms of what damage it does to your credibility. The white papers I've been reading so far are about that thick. Not recommended unless you have insomnia. But what we try to do is distill what you need to know to make sure that you are in the right place to be prepared for this data compliance regulation when it does roll out. Organizations must, this is the important bit, implement appropriate security measures. So the word appropriate is the key one there. There's a number of lawyers in the room, but appropriate is always a nice word because it gives you a little bit of wriggle room. The second one is slightly more vague. You must have a data protection officer unless you are an SME. At the moment, SME means 100 users or less, but that is yet to be decided. Okay? So most of the companies that we, as a company, CIS as a company, work with, won't need to have a data protection officer. The final thing is to have a clear data protection policy. Now, most data protection policies are either online somewhere or stored in files or even in paper covered in dust. They get written once, they get looked at, and that's a great security policy, and then it's pushed to one side. Probably the most useless thing you can do. A data security policy is a living organism, and it has to mesh in with your business policies. We'll come along to that later on. If you don't apply to the EU data regulations, then that's when the nasty bits happen. Fine up to 20 million euros or 4% of turnover, not profit, turnover. Okay, so it's serious stuff. And again, I can't stress enough, this is not the EU trying to generate funds. What it is the EU making it a big enough stick to make sure people use best practice when it comes to protecting personal identifiable information. However, if you suffer a breach and show that you have taken all appropriate steps to protect it and encrypted the data, you don't have to notify the authority, you don't have to notify the owners of the data, and in all probability, you will avoid the fine. The difference is here, you have to prove that you have done those things. So, a little bit of history. January 2012, this whole idea was put together, based on the 1995 directive, and at the end of January, they had a working framework say, okay, this is what we're going to do. True EU fashion, 2 years and 3 months later, after numerous amendments and discussions, it went to the European Parliament, and a 95% majority backed it. This thing will happen, it's just a matter of when. The general consensus is that 2016, middle to end, is when it's likely to happen. So why is it so important to have these sort of regulations? What sort of things have been happening to make people think, you know, we should look after our data? There was a survey taken, a pan-European survey, so France, Germany, and the UK, about 500 companies in each one. And the company size, from our point of view, was great. This is very relevant to CIS as a company. 3/4 of them were less than 250 users. So, yeah, kind of average company sizes. And here's what they found. Nearly 2/3 are worried about the security of their corporate data. I would suggest that the remaining third either don't know or don't care, because there will be a problem with it. 49% of company laptops are not encrypted. So for every 2 laptops that are lost, stolen, or go astray, one of them is a wide open gateway to your network, or your company details, or whatever data is stored in. 23% of companies secure both customer and employee data. Personal identifiable information is not just about clients. It's not just about customers. It's about the people who work in the business too. Any person has PII. That needs to be protected. Whether you take money from them or pay the money, doesn't matter. So the protection has to go across the company. 49% are not clear on their organisation's data security policy, and the other 51% think they are, but probably aren't. Most times, the security policy gets rolled out, there is a training session, and that's it. As things change, as working practices change, as technology changes, the same data security policy is left written in stone. It doesn't work. Significant action is required to secure personal data and comply with the upcoming regulation. And significant is the key word there. So, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? First thing is, I've mentioned a number of times, encryption, encryption, encryption. The key part of the data compliance regulation is that any breach of data, the data has to be usable. If it's not usable, it's fairly well covered. Encryption is key to making data unusable for people who don't have the right keys, don't have the right password, if you like, to unlock that data. Regulations will require companies to do the following. Implement appropriate security measures to protect personal data. A big part of that is encryption. So there's also layered security to make sure the breaches don't occur in the first place. I'll go through that a little bit later on. The second part is that you will have to notify the authorities that a breach has occurred. And the final part is that if you haven't notified the authorities and you haven't taken the appropriate securities and you're found out, you'll be fined. And those fines, as I mentioned before, 20 million euros or 4% of company turnover. However, if you have encryption and you have encrypted the data and you can prove you have encrypted the data, that's the key part. In English law, correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, in English law you're innocent until proven guilty. This way you're guilty until proven innocent. You have to prove what you've done. If I have a laptop and I've encrypted it and I lose it and the EU come to me and say, right, Ross, your laptop. I say, oh, it's okay, it was encrypted. Was it? Prove it to me. But it's stolen. So there has to be ways of monitoring, reporting, and recording the act of encryption, dated, auditable, and with a audit trail available. If you don't do these things, again, there will be a fine. But if the data is encrypted, the chances are the fine will either be non-existent or minimal, because you have made best efforts, used best practice to protect the data that's in your control. So, taking encryption to one side, that's a key part of it. The other part is, how do you protect these data breaches in the first place? What's the best way to look after your data? A lot of it is really, really self-evident. 95% of that stuff that comes through Microsoft with the updates and you've got to restart the PC, they're security fixes. They make the operating system a little bit more secure. Without a vulnerability to exploit, attacks won't occur. So that's what that's all about. So make sure that things are patched. How do end users use the data? What sort of things get done with it? Where is it stored? Where is it transferred to? Who has access to it? Why would they have access to it? When you have people going around the network, we look at a lot of people's networks, and we have access to all sorts of things. We're trustworthy. Is everyone? How many people out there on your network working for you do you understand, do you know, do you trust, and make sure they can't see the data? Okay? So simple things like that. It's not always about technology. Keep patches up to date. Apply multi-layer endpoint protection. So make sure you have stuff that protects you from threats from the web, from email, from networks, from drive-by hackers, anything. So layer after layer after layer. I might make another suggestion. Instead of just using one vendor, use two. If you have very, very, really data they want to keep really secure, have two firewalls made by different vendors. That way, if the stuff gets through one, it won't get through the second. Okay? Belt and braces. Advanced threat protection. Zero-day attacks is when something happens that there isn't a definition for. So use protection that A, doesn't just use definitions, B, if it does, it gets updated very quickly, or C, uses technology that can test for what looks like an abnormal event and then flag it up. Okay? Selective sandboxing. Sounds like a great name, but it's a sort of thing that a 3-year-old kid would do in a playground. What that's all about is running strange-looking executables or programs in a protected environment. Has anyone heard of ransomware? Yep. So ransomware is a particularly nasty way of holding people to ransom, as the name suggests. You click on a macro, run it because it's in an Excel spreadsheet, and all of a sudden your database is encrypted. Have you got the encryption key? Nope. Who has? The guy who's demanding 800 bitcoins or 1,000 bitcoins from you to be sent to him, otherwise your data is down the toilet. Okay? Sandboxes allow you to run those things in a protected environment and see what's happening. And finally, getting away from technology again, does everyone need to see all the data? I look after the sales and marketing side of things in CIS. So I need to know, the details of my team's salaries. Do I need to know details of my boss's salary or the tech department's salary? No. So why let me have access to it? What applications do I need to use to use my job? Limit the ones I can use. What devices do I need to use? Limit them. Limit the access I have data to, but within the bounds of your business needs. I've been waved at, so I need to go. How can we help? Data encryption, data management security, resilience and continuity. It's all about encryption, layered security, and having the data stored in a very secure and accredited situation. We can help you to make a security policy to ensure compliance and allow you to focus on your business. That goes back to the bit what I was saying that we talk business to business people, not technology. In summary, the legislation will go ahead. The key stakeholders want to move very fast, and pressure is building up. Confidence of people using stuff online is slipping. This will happen. You need to be ready to impose these more structured security policies on your business, and it needs to be done before the end of this year. This is the last bit, so I will whiz through this. We have some resources available, if I can get this to work. There we go. Sample data protection policy. Give you an idea of what's needed, what sort of things you need to look out for. Data security compliance check, that's really good. Just have a look at it, it's on our website. Just run through it, it'll give you an idea where you stand. And if you're really bored, white paper on EU data protection regulation. You can try it for free and try some products for free. There's an encryption product and an email encryption product you can try for free. And they're all on our website. I have overrun. I do apologize, but thank you very much indeed for your attention.